You still got to be a little disappointed in what we saw out of the Duke Blue Devils on Saturday against North Carolina. Can they bounce back? Can they get ready for a big run in the ACC basketball tournament?
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. It's so great to have you here with us on Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. My name is J.J. Jackson, the host of this fine program. Excited to talk about everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Really fired up to be talking about Duke basketball. It's ACC Tournament week. It's one of our favorite weeks across the state of North Carolina and throughout the Atlantic Coast Conference. And Duke's poised to make another big run. Fresh off winning the ACC tournament last year, let's see if the Blue Devils can win it again this season. We do got to talk, however, about Saturday's game against the North Carolina Tar Heels, a pretty disappointing performance from the Blue Devils. So let's bring someone in who was there on the floor with the Duke basketball team. It's our good buddy Josh Cox, who's joining us on the program today. We'll discuss that and the ACC tournament as well. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. And one final ask of you, please, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Like this video, share it with your friends. Let's keep getting the show out there in front of people and really do appreciate your support here for Locked On Blue Devils. So without further ado, let's bring him on in, our good friend Josh Cox from the Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast and from Duke Report. He was on this past week talking about not sure whether or not he'd be on press row for the game. In the comment section down below on YouTube, there were people advocating for Josh Cox to be on press row. When I saw that, my day was made, Josh, that folks watching our show wanted to make sure you got a spot there, and you've got some good news, man.
Yeah, I landed it. Shout out to the people inside the program there that let me get in. And then sure enough, during the national anthem, I was scanning, the row there, and I got a text from a buddy. There's an empty seat 2 spots down from me. And so by the time tip-off happened, I was in a seat on press row. And so I didn't know what I was going to do, stand up, kind of move around if I didn't get a seat. But I was in the building. I was in the building. So it was a lot of fun.
And we got to see yet another installment of college basketball's finest rivalry. Jay Billis always wants to make the case for sports' finest rivalry, and I'm right there with them. Being a native of the state, you and I both know exactly what this means. Year in and year out, last year, Duke sweeps North Carolina. What a great feeling that is. However, the Tar Heels are getting to experience that this year, having defeated Duke in both meetings of the regular season. The big trends, what jumped out from you to you from Saturday's game?
Well, I mean, first of all, you knew there was going to be the inevitable, right? In the first game, it was Harrison Ingram, who was going to shoot out of his mind and play a game like he hasn't played the entire season. And I think we may have mentioned his name last week in our preview, but threw around, this is just a game where Cormac Ryan just wakes up. And sure enough,
he did.
He did. He woke up. He has not had a game anywhere close to that this entire season and will not have one from here on out. I cannot wait for the hangover in the ACC tournament from him. But that was obviously something. I mean, you knew there was going to be somebody, that was going to come out there. On the positive side, kind of a theme that we saw in both games is I think we're overlooking how good of a job Tyrese Proctor really did on RJ Davis. I mean, RJ Davis in neither game, RJ Davis did not, he was solid, but he was not ACC Player of the Year RJ Davis, which he well deserves in either one of those games. So that I noticed that as a theme in both games. And then, we mentioned it offline, JJ. I just feel like that matchup at the 5 is such a bad matchup for Filipowski. And because,
talking about Armando Bacot.
Bacot, yeah. And because UNC is a little more flexible on defense. Ingram can guard Flip, and they can put Armando on Mark Mitchell, who's not going to shoot much, and Sean Stewart, who's not going to shoot at all from outside. And so they can just clog that lane up, man, and it just causes some issues and some problems. And so those are the themes, man. I think they rode through both games. There was going to be somebody that goes off. Proctor played well and shut RJ, contained RJ, but then the Baycott mismatch is just too much.
Yeah, Duke had the lead for all of 16 seconds this year against North Carolina. Do not want to see that duplicate going into next season's matchups, or much less Saturday if we were to see both of these teams play in the ACC Tournament Championship final. In Saturday's game, unlike the first one, however, there were some runs back and forth from both teams. As we talked about in Chapel Hill a little bit earlier this season, Duke never really made it a two-possession game until under a minute left to play in the first meeting, and then North Carolina free throws at the end give them that 9-point margin at the end of it. In the second half, Duke comes out, goes on a big run there to start, cuts it down to a 1-point game. It's back and forth between 4, 5, 6, 7 points for a good portion there in the second half. But Duke had some turnovers when they didn't need to. Only 7 on the game. That's a positive note there. But then there were just some shots we're used to seeing Duke make that weren't falling as well.
I thought, JJ, you're spot on. I thought there were a couple of times in the second half, I'm sitting there and actually twice I started videoing from press row, which you're not really supposed to do, but I started videoing from press row because I'm thinking, okay, if we come down on this possession, like Cameron was rolling, if we hit a shot on this possession, this place is going to explode. And we never did. Like, we either turned it over, we missed open shots, whatever it was. And you mentioned only 7 turnovers. I know there were 2 of them in those moments where it's like, we need to get a really good shot here. And it didn't happen. And so, Duke never could, climb all the way over the top of that hill. You mentioned getting close by 1. I believe another time they cut it to 3. And they just couldn't. It was like they just had they needed a knockout punch, and they just couldn't deliver it. And, credit to UNC, man. Like, I'm a hater, but, I mean, you have to credit them. They did what they needed to do to win the game on the road. And that's not an easy thing in this rivalry. We know that. So,
without a doubt, we will do that. We'll credit those Tar Heels of North Carolina for the win that they got over Duke. And hopefully Duke gets an opportunity to see them again on Saturday in the ACC Tournament Championship. Still a long way to go to make that happen. We want to take a quick timeout, want to talk a little bit more about some individual performances from over the weekend, and then set you up for the ACC Tournament this week on this Tuesday episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is always your updating assistant to call on almost everything. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder also has room for up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability, 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to help you out. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or even the Nissan Armada and go find your next adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Shop now at NissanUSA.com, proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Ready to move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. I'm JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox, who's with Duke Report. He's with the Section 17 podcast. He's all over the place. It's where you can find his great work. We want to talk a little bit about the individual performances that we saw. You mentioned Tyrese Proctor, and I didn't get a chance to talk as much about him on yesterday's show, Josh. But yeah, 14 points on the day, played all 40 minutes. Consecutive games now that Tyrese has gone the whole way.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing the value of Tyrese. Obviously, with Caleb Foster out, he's being kind of forced into that. But I mean, kudos to him. Like I said, he gave tons of effort on the defensive end. He was steadily matched up, with RJ Davis. And then to not only do that, but then to be effective on the offensive end as well. It just shows you why. It's funny when we talk about everyone's next step. If you look at these past 2 games, this is why he's an NBA prospect. This is why GMs look at him and they see what he can do. They see his value on both ends of the court. And so I thought this was a very good game for him. And hopefully he can ride that momentum, into the ACC tournament.
That's what we're hoping for, and I'm sure he can. I think that he's definitely been playing his best basketball at the right time of year, kind of similar to last season. I think of that game he had against Tennessee in the NCAA tournament, how special he was, one of the only guys that really showed up in that one for Duke. Yeah, we're hopeful that Proctor can continue to lead the way for the Duke basketball team. What's another individual performance that stood out to you? It can either be a good one or, someone who didn't step up to the task.
All right. Well, since I was positive on Tyrese, I'll point out the obvious negative. And this is, let me combine the stats. I will combine them.
All right.
Of Sean Stewart and Mark Mitchell. The combined stats of that secondary guy, right? The guy that's supposed to help out Filipowski, the guy that's supposed to be in that dunker spot, right? The guy, whatever it may be. They scored a total together of 3 points on 1 of 3 shooting together. They had a grand total of 5 rebounds together. They had 7 personal fouls, and they played a whopping 26 total minutes together.
Crazy.
No shows, absolute no shows. And Duke is, listen, we all know this. Well, I don't even know what the record is now, but it's crazy when Mark Mitchell scores in double figures, how successful Duke is. And so he is vital to Duke's success. I'm not criticizing these 2 guys. What I'm saying is if they don't play well, at least one of them doesn't play well, Duke's not in a position to win basketball games. I'm sorry. I know he's got value, but when you are relying on Ryan Young in a game like this, that's not a good thing. And so, these 2 guys should have been able to provide more in this game, and they absolutely could not. So that's my second thing to point out. It's just the no-show that was that position, really, that 4 position for Duke, Mark Mitchell and Sean Stewart.
Yeah, Mark Mitchell just didn't play much down the stretch for Duke there in the second half, and it was more Ryan Young, who we can also talk about as well. Killer. I hate to see that on a final game played inside Cameron Indoor Stadium for somebody, but 6 rebounds. Did a really nice job kind of creating second chances and opportunities for Duke. But on the defensive end of the floor, the one kind of runner 8-footer late in the second half that would have made it a 5-point game, I believe, that hit every part of the rim but the bottom of the net. Just really tough go of it for Ryan Young too.
Yeah, and is it weird, man? I might be delusional here, but I haven't said it because I think people might make fun of me. And go ahead, please do in the comments if you'd like. Have there not been numerous times this year where I'm like, man, Christian Reeves and his 7'1" big body, he has 5 fouls to give. Even him against Baycott, right? Even bringing him in to spell, Filipowski or the 4s to allow, some more spacing or some more flexibility on defense. And I know obviously he's out for the year with injury, but what I'm saying is I'm even thinking about that. Certainly his body, even if he fouled out, he's going to give you some quality minutes, grab some rebounds, play in the dunker spot. You can't mess anything up too bad on the offensive end by doing that. So anyway, I don't know. Those are just thoughts that I have in my head, and I'm afraid to tweet them because I know they're kind of out there. But I'm just thinking about how could Duke have defended this team better? And I say that, JJ, because when we come up against a team in the NCAA tournament that has front court depth and they're really good in the front court, we're going to be saying the same thing.
Yeah. And then you become the guy that's asking about Christian Reeves, Josh.
I know. It's
who is this guy? Why does he care about Christian Reeves?
It's like one of my friends last year could not shut up talking about Jaden Shoot. And I was like, I didn't want to call him out, but I'm like, come on, man. I know he looks good in practice.
By the way, speaking of that friend you have that may or may not appear on the show every single day of the week, speaking of that friend, noted absence as well. I debated whether or not I was going to tweet and bring attention to it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big a deal. Jaden Shute was not inside Cameron Indoor for that game on Saturday.
I've seen a picture circulating from like I think it's his mom or his dad, social media, and he had some kind of surgery because the picture said something about not the way we anticipated spring break or what something. I don't know what it was.
Okay.
But it was like him and his brother or something, both in a boot.
Okay.
So I think that may be what they maybe were like, hey man, you're good.
Recovering and you're good.
Go home and recover.
Right.
So,
fair.
I don't know.
Fair.
I can tell you this, and I'm being honest. I know nothing about it. There's not been any chatter, like media chatter, like behind the scenes. I know nothing about it. But actually, he hasn't been at the last couple of games. So,
should I sell my stock?
You may have lost money. You may have lost quite a bit of money already.
Yeah, no, you're right. No one wants it at this point, but I do. Come back healthy, Jaden Shute. Be a big part of this team for Duke next year. All right, transitioning, a great shooting guard. This is not up for debate. My friend has been oohing and awing over his performances for this entire season. One Mr. Jared McCain, and that friend I'm alluding to is you, Josh. He was pretty awesome. Once again, the only guy who's really shown up in both games against the Tar Heels this season.
Yeah, and that gives me big hope for March, right? For what's happening this week in the ACC tournament, and then next week as the NCAA tournament begins. I feel like we have a guy that like thrives in the moment and like enjoys the spotlight and has fun. Like, I mean, there's so much going on in that Duke Carolina game. There's so much, off of the court that's happening, on the court that's happening, and you got this freshman, this 19-year-old kid going around with this big grin on his face, just like, you know what I mean? Like just having the time of his life out there. And yeah, I mean, he shot the ball well, back to 40% in this game from three. And I thought he had a couple of bunnies that he missed, that would have put him up over 20 points. And so, once again, I'm looking here at the stats as everyone can see, he played 38 minutes. Roach played 39 minutes. And so, I mean, once again, no Caleb Foster. Those guys are kind of all shouldering that load. We can pretty much bet now that Jalen Blake's is kind of out of the rotation for the remainder of the season, I would assume, with TJ Power stepping in some. And so shout out to Jared McCain, man. Yeah. Love the kid. Hope he continues to do his thing and can catch fire in March.
Good day for the TJ Power numbers as well, especially if you go at the per 40 basis, given what he was able to do in 4 minutes of action. But let's do it. Let's have the Kyle Filipowski discussion that needs to be had. 8 of 18 from the floor, 2 of 6 from 3-point range, 5 of 8 on free throws, had 7 rebounds in this one, 23 points in 34 minutes. We had Jordan Mann on the program yesterday, who's talking about the synergy numbers that Filipowski is shooting 30% on uncontested shots. 30% on uncontested shots this season. Again, there just become some numbers that are not a good look for Mr. Filipowski.
Yeah, I think another one, and I think it may have been Jordan who posted this, but like 58% at the rim or 58% around the rim. That's just, but okay, the 30% I don't get. I definitely, he's got a good looking shot, right? It looks good. His form is great. When he hits them, I mean, there's no doubt about him. Like they're in. I don't get why he doesn't shoot well, because if he was shooting better, we could just all say he's playing out of position. There's no reason for him to be on the block. He needs to be out on the perimeter. But those numbers just don't match up. But I will say this. Digging into the deeper analytics and numbers show us why people are frustrated with him. But, man, I've never seen a player average 17 points a game, over 8 boards a game, and 3 assists a game in a Duke uniform and catch the heat that he catches sometimes. Like, I mean, I know he doesn't do it in like a pretty way probably. But, man, listen, without Kyle Filipowski, you talked about Duke coming out in the second half and going on that run. That was 100% Kyle Filipowski. So, like, he's a mixed bag, man. And then do we want to talk about the elephant in the room? Like, the trip?
Yeah.
It's like he shows signs of really struggling in the moment, man, and he gets caught up in things emotionally And I'm really surprised that trip has not gotten even more publicity. I'm surprised Shire's not had to make a statement. I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised he's not suspended for the next game. I saw it in real time, and I was like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh no, like this is about to blow up. And it blew up a little bit, but it didn't blow up like Grayson Allen blow up. So anyway, but once again, man, those are just all signs that like, man, there's just like he's just not firing on all cylinders, and I hate it for him.
Definitely want him to be. First team all ACC for Kyle Filipowski. Really good regular season. But there are just some numbers that are kind of eye-opening and not what you would expect them to be. So we've got the ACC tournament now due up next for the Duke basketball team, and we'll talk about that after we take our final timeout here on today's episode of the program. All right, Locked On Blue Devils brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game in the tourney. And guess what? In North Carolina, we can do that now. Pretty exciting stuff. Whether you're betting on a big upset of a number one seed or it's time to go dance, or you want the one seed to go all the way, it's time to go dancing on America's number one sportsbook. New customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Once again, FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops all the way until they cut down those nets. Fought a few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox of Duke Report and the Section 17 podcast. The ACC tournament is this week. It starts today in our nation's capital. Duke will play on Thursday, expected to be a 7 p.m. Eastern tip-off that Duke will play. They will either play Syracuse, NC State, Louisville. We'll see kind of how this all shakes out and that sort of thing. But how important, it's obviously important for Duke to bounce back, but what do you think it's going to go into making that happen for this Duke team, Josh?
There's three teams, NC State, Louisville, and Syracuse. Those are all teams that have been, relatively easy wins for Duke. And so I like that. Obviously, I like the double bye that Duke gets. They're not playing until Thursday. And I think as we speak, as we're recording this, there are games going on, that Louisville NC State game. But I like that first matchup. And then with Virginia being the 3 seed, I mean, a week and a half ago, Virginia came to Cameron and got curb stomped. And I mean, when I say curb stomped, I mean, it wasn't even close. They didn't belong on the same court as Duke. I don't see them correcting a 30-point loss, basically. I just don't see how UVA can do that. And so, to me, we're setting ourselves up. I mean, the ACC is so top-heavy with UNC and Duke. I think we're setting ourselves up for another Saturday Duke UNC championship game. Who knows? I mean, anything can happen in this ACC tournament. I'm okay with it as well. Listen, I can handle anything. We handled Coach K's last season and how all that unfolded. We can handle anything. They can beat us a third time.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Heck, they could beat us a fourth time if they see us in the NCAA tournament.
I've
already gone through it.
Right.
I've already processed that, and I've come to grips with it. So, yeah, I think it would be interesting to face them on a neutral court for a third time. I mean, they match up with us well, but beating anybody a third time is tough. So, that's the way I see it on Duke's side. It's pretty straightforward. Duke's going to be heavily favored all the way to the championship. And if barring a terrible, display from Duke, we should see them Saturday playing against whoever that opponent from the top of the bracket will be.
Yeah, bracket available if you're watching with us on YouTube right now. Again, Duke will play on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, either Syracuse, NC State, or Louisville. So with that being said, Josh, we're going to be optimistic. We want Duke to play 3 games this weekend. We want it to be that Thursday, Friday, Saturday run on the way to a championship. Who's due for a big week? Who on this Duke basketball roster do you believe is due for a big week?
I'm going to have to go with the senior, man. I'm going to have to go with Jeremy Roach. I mean, if there is ever a time for you to channel your inner Quinn Cook, right, it's now. Like, time starts now. I felt bad for Jeremy. I thought he had a rough go of it Saturday in Cameron for his final home game. And so I would love to see Jeremy Roach be that guy, and not overdo it, not push it, but just, you want to see his shots fall, his confidence there. I have full confidence in Jeremy to make the right decisions. And so that's who I would point. I think if Duke is going to, there's the obvious of Filipowski and McCain, but I think Roach is the guy. If Roach is feeling it, then crunch time comes. He's in control. He plays a great two-man game with Filipowski. And so I'm going Jeremy Roach is the key.
That's the voice of Josh Cox right there. Here's a couple of social media platforms to follow: at Joshua Cox, at Duke FB Talk, and at Duke Report. The ball's in your court, Josh. What do you want to promote? What can people go find?
Well, first of all, FanDuel is a sponsor of this podcast. And if you haven't had fun yet doing that, I mean, you get some free money to kind of play with after you make your first bet. And so I lost my bet with my real money, but now I have money to play with.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll see. But no, that's interesting. But no, I would say I work with Duke Report. I want to shout out to Freddie Hodges. And that's been really neat. And I hope that if you follow along with Duke Report, we kind of resurrected that Twitter account. It had kind of been sitting idle for a while. We kind of resurrected it. I think we added like 800 followers throughout the season, which was really cool. But follow along there. We'll probably be tweeting throughout the ACC tournament, even though we won't be there in person. But I really appreciate what he is doing over there. And then spring football practice begins March the 22nd. Just want next Friday. Just want everybody to know that. And so I will definitely be I'll be in Disney that week. But when I get back from Disney, we will be attending every practice that they have open for us. We'll begin the Duke football chatter. Obviously, Malik Murphy coming in, who was, by the way, at the game Saturday night. Got to meet him in person. And then Duke football has
as big as advertised.
Oh, he is. He looks like a defensive end.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, bro, he is massive. And then Duke had 3 or 4 or 5 recruits, high school recruits in as well for the game from football. So yeah, anyway, it's getting football season. And so like, I'm slowly going to make that transition.
Yeah. Woke up this morning and saw that Duke football posted 8 minutes worth of highlights for number 8, Jordan Moore, and was just reminded of how sensational he is. So, and
from what we've been told, he is absolutely leading the way in the weight room this offseason.
Yeah.
So,
and Graham Barton's poised to be a first-round draft pick here in a few weeks, right?
Yeah. Shout out. Graham was also at the Duke game Saturday night. Got to speak to Graham and talk to him for a little bit. But yeah, mock drafts are having him into the first. And you've seen him go anywhere and everywhere, right? Yeah. You've seen Jacksonville, you've seen Dallas, you've seen. You know what I mean? You've seen all different types of things. Who knows?
I really wanted you to name all 32 teams.
Yeah.
Because that's what it feels like.
That's what it is.
Does Josh Cox know the NFL teams?
I would start from the East Coast and try to work my way down and then over. And yeah, I'd miss a couple. But yeah, it depends on who you look at. But it does look like late first round, maybe early second round if he drops. And JJ, you follow these drafts long enough to know that like one early pick, like one team jumping at like an offensive lineman can trigger the next few teams going, oh, we don't want to miss out on an offensive lineman.
Right.
So they can bump up. And then conversely, a team passing on an offensive lineman can push everybody down. Yeah. And so like, it just kind of depends on how the draft flows.
It's why we watch it each and every year. It's great stuff. Right. Great content as always. Josh, you're the best. We got championships to go win now that March is here, and looking forward to talking to you again next week. Thanks for the time today.
JJ, have a great day, man. We'll see you.
All right, that's Josh Cox joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Love that guy. Been doing many conversations with him for several years now at this point, and hopefully you appreciate the fun banter back and forth that we're able to have with Josh each and every week. That'll do it for our show here today. Once again, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to our podcast feed, leave us a 5-star rating and written review. It means a whole lot to us. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.